This is an interview with Ernesto Sanchez, a man who has defied the odds and succeeded over unimaginable challenges. He has faced adversity in the form of becoming a gang member, being shot, serving time in prison, and battling with his own self-doubt. But through his resilience, determination, and unwavering spirit, he has emerged stronger and turned into an amazing father, husband, and inspiration to all those that have lost hope. His story is a true inspiration to us all, and I'm honored to have him on my show. Before we dive into the conversation, I want to give a quick shout out to my sponsor, Jail Guitar Doors USA, at the Capo Center in Los Angeles, California. Jail Guitar Doors is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that brings the universal healing power of music to historically marginalized communities and underserved populations. These include system-impacted youth and adults experiencing incarceration. Their programs provide a creative and holistic path to successful reentry and recovery from past traumas and gainful employment. Thank you, Jail Guitar Doors, for supporting the How to Battle show and helping us bring this inspirational story to our listeners. I'm just trying to be the man I didn't have in my life. What does that mean to you?
I think everything I do is just try to be an example. Actually, that's something that I come up with all the time. I'm just trying to be the individual for my son. And I know I'm his father, but just that individual that he can look up to, right?
Yeah.
Everything I do, I think about him. Not perfect. I come with a lot of trauma and a lot of baggage, and I feel that even being a father, that's a hard thing. It's a big responsibility.
Yeah.
So when I think about something like that in that quote, I think about just trying to be that enforcement in my son's life, whether it's emotionally, mentally, or physically. And every day, I try to remember every day when I wake up and I see him and I tell him, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to do anything, but I'm just I'm proud of you. I love you. I want you to understand that. And my son's only 2 years old. He's soon to be 3.
Yeah.
But it's never too late to actually start that, right? Because then it just becomes something that's natural.
Yeah.
And it's authentic too, because I want him to know that I took that time to grab him, put him in front of me and say, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
I love you. So, I try to be that individual because I never had that.
Right.
I didn't have a father figure sitting me down and say, I'm proud of you, mijo. Yeah. This is what I want. And this is why I'm proud of you, why I love you and I care for you. So that's what it means to me.
Had you had a father that did those things in your life, like the things you do for your son, how do you think that would have impacted you?
I think it would have impacted me in a major way. I know for a fact that those are the things that I urged the most growing up. I urged having that father figure in my life.
Yeah.
And I know just that because even in the lifestyle that I lived, I always gravitated towards older men. I wanted to be around older men because I wanted their approval. Not like when I was around my homeboys that were around my age, I didn't really care about their approval or what they even thought. It was always the older individuals.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I would have just had an individual that was just a fit role model for me, and to some way I had them, but it's nothing like having your own father, your own blood.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that makes a huge difference because I had a stepfather, and my stepfather's a good man. Yeah. It's just he's not my actual father. So.
Yeah. And did you have a lot of negative older male role models in your life growing up, or positive ones?
I think it was 50-50.
Yeah.
It was a mixture of both. I can't say that my life was all messed up and I didn't have anything good in my life. No, of course not. I had my grandfather. I actually named my son after my grandfather because I had that much level of respect for my grandfather and the example that he set for us, right? I also had uncles to this day that still check up on me, you know, and that have done everything possible to be there through my difficult times.
Yeah. That's interesting because, so, I mean, take us a little bit through your journey, like how, you know, like the path you went on, where you ended up, but like what influenced you to get there? Because like you said, you had a 50-50 good, and you had some good and some positive, and some negative and bad role models around you.
Yeah.
Along the journey that you went on, why did you steer toward one way over the other, or how did that happen? Like, how did you end up?
You know, I think that in my situation, I gravitated towards the more negative individuals because of what they had to offer, right? I've talked about it in the past, you know, through my healing process, that it was the individuals that had the money, that had the cars, that had the big houses, you know, that had the stack of money. That's what intrigued me. And then from that also came some type of love, you know, like, and when someone shows you that, then you seem to follow that. You want to say, oh, you know what, this is an example. And even though you're young and you don't see it as an example, it seems more gravitating to, like, you know, you more appealing. And I did at a young age. The individuals that were around my family did live a certain way, and I wanted that.
And so take us a little bit through your journey, like, you know, where your life between the ages of, well, I think this is a pivotal time in people's lives, is around 14, 15 up into, let's say, into your 20s. Like, take us through a little bit of that journey.
You know, from the ages of like 12, 13, I feel that I was making a transition, right? I once heard that between the ages of 1 and 18, those are very important, because whether you're at your infancy or your adolescence and then you go into your teenage years, it's very critical what you kind of intake and what's your environment, because you grasp that. You know, a little kid, you know, if you say something, he's going to repeat it. So for me, in my environment, and at 12 years old, I felt that I already had a lot of information, whether good and bad. And like I mentioned, I gravitated towards the bad. So when I went to school, it was just like, I'm going to do what my so-and-so family or friends are doing, which is selling drugs. I remember at a young age, like, I don't even think probably too many of my family members know, but I was already in middle school and I was selling drugs. Like, you're a 6th, 7th, 8th grader, and I had my backpack stuffed with drugs to go to school and sell dimes and nickels. So I knew what I wanted to do. What that required was, you know, I need to save my money. I need to go buy this product, and I can sell it, and I can save my money. Like, at that young age, I already had the mind of saying, you know what, I need to do this, then I can flip that, then I can flip that, then I can flip that, right? And like, you think of it like no kid should have to sit down and really say, well, you know what? And I was well off, like my family was well off. You know, I come from a very good, you know, stable family, at least at that point, right? Whether they were doing good or bad, they were still well off, but it's the example that you see. So you think that you have to also follow those footsteps.
And it's interesting because, like, when you were talking about selling drugs in middle school, right? I know, like, in today's society, we always see on the news kids getting drugs, overdosing. They're tragic things, but we never think about, well, I know I really don't think about the person that's selling the drug. We think about the victim, the kid that took the drug, but where are they getting the drugs from? And a lot of people don't know that they're getting the drugs from other kids, their peers, that may be like how you were or how I was. And so at that age, when you were selling drugs in the school, did you ever think about the kids you were selling the drugs to, or it was more about just you trying to fuel your needs and wants?
I didn't actually. You don't think about the like repercussion, and you don't think about the ripple effect.
Yeah.
For me, it was just like, actually at a young age, I said, well, I'm selling drugs. Potentially, I can be robbed. So I have to go buy a gun.
Yeah.
So now I have to like sell more so that I can go buy this $500 or $300 gun, and so that I can keep it with me when I go to school or when I do decide to sell in the streets.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not even thinking of the damage and the harm that I'm committing or, you know, introducing to somebody's household or kids or addiction or whatnot. Like I didn't think of that, and you don't think of that.
Yeah.
You know, a lot
empathy, you know, you lack the empathy. And I think because at that age, we're not even fully developed yet mentally.
Yes.
And so we don't have the capacity to fully empathize. And so I think it's important that people recognize that when, you know, a teenage kid is doing crime or selling drugs, you know, any of that stuff, that it's not because they're a bad person, it's because of what they went through growing up, trauma they witnessed.
Exactly.
They're not fully evolved yet, they're not fully mature. And that's something that, like, you know, I believe that is important to recognize, especially when, you know, we all know people that go into prison at a young age, 16, 17, 18, sent to prison for life. And, you know, they grow up in prison and they're not even the same person anymore.
No,
you know, it's like,
you don't. You become something else.
Yeah.
You become something else. And I always think about it in some way, like learning how to be a hustler, like has came down my, you know, my family bloodline, right?
Yeah.
And getting a little older, I knew like, oh, it just evolved. It evolved. And I'm not gonna say I'm gonna sit here and be like, oh, I was this big drug. No.
Yeah.
But you know, you're selling and you're committing a crime, and you know, you end up evolving over years, because as you get older, whether it's 16, 17, 18, and that's what I did. I got evolved, like I started selling more, and then I didn't only have one gun, I had 3 guns now. Because in my mind, like everything you see in movies and you hear in music, like it becomes like, whether you watch Goodfellas, Scarface, all these movies, like, man, this dude got robbed, so I need to have a bigger gun. Yeah. So now I have an AK rather than, you know, a smaller gun, because, you know, you make more of a bigger impact, right? And for me, I just evolved. And then of course, you know, a different lifestyle comes in, being a gang member. You know, and that's just a whole different fraction. That's a whole different element besides selling drugs. Because not only now are you a drug dealer, but now you're a gang member that represents a certain street, a certain number, a certain block. And for me, like, it was kind of like in and out of things, you know, and trying to navigate my way out. And of course, when we go back to like the 12, 13, and 14, like I had completely lost myself. Any hopes and desires that I had to be something else in life, like had went out the window, because I didn't have that emotional and mental support from individuals that were supposed to be there to actually guide me through and say, well, this is what we have to do, and we're going to put you here, we're going to invest in you in a positive way, right? So if you don't have that there, it's left for the wrong people to invest in you. And for me, like, it was just the neighborhood gangsters, you know, the neighborhood people, the neighborhood individuals that were living the lifestyle that I wanted to live.
And I think that, like, we're like social by nature, so we're gonna be attracted to those that are closest to us. And if you grow up in a gang neighborhood around gang members, your uncles are gang members, stuff like that, and you look up to them, you get drawn into that. And then when you get there, you recognize, like, okay, well, the hardest gangsters get the most respect.
They
get the most everything. They get, you know, so that's like, okay, so now I got to be bigger and badder than everybody else. And that fuels the violence. Because, you know, it's like, okay, I got to I gotta be a shooter, I gotta be this, I gotta have money, I gotta sell big drugs.
Yeah.
So like, at what age did you get in the gang, and like how did you get into the gang? Like, how were you?
It had to be coming into my high school years, right? Leaving middle school and going into my high school years. Whether I can say like from this age, I actually like, it was almost like it was there. Yeah. Like some of my cousins and some of my uncles and some of my uncle's homeboys, like they already had glamorized the life. So at a young age, I was like, well, I know I'm gonna be from this gang, right? Like whether it was destined or it was thrown upon me, like enforced, like at the end of the day, it's like you kind of tell yourself like, yeah, I'm gonna be a gangster, right? Yeah. And you're influenced, like you know, the strongest influences are there, and you end up becoming that, right? Yeah. So at you know, starting my high school year, I had already embraced the gang lifestyle of who I was gonna become, you know, what my nickname was gonna be, everything, you know. And I think just like anybody else, whether you grew up into it or you were just kind of chosen or you just thought it was like, well, let me try this phase and see what happens. No one really thinks about the outcome, right? We think it's just like the thing to do, you know, like a trend, right? And for some people, like I mentioned, it might not be that way. For some, it might. But for me, it was just kind of like, you know what, I want to be a gang member. I want to be a gang member. I want to make sure that I build a reputation, that I can control the streets, and you start building this persona, right? And like, really, that just kind of became who I was. Even when I hit towards like my late teens, like 17 and 18, like I made sure that whatever I did, that was still there. Whether it was something that was positive, whether it was going out with the family, whether it was having a job, like I was still this other person, right? So now like I'm code switching. So I'm with my loved ones and I have to be this individual, which is Ernesto. And when I'm with my homeboys, I have to be this individual. And you know, I could say that at one point I was living a double life.
How many of your homeboys or family or people have you lost? How many people have you known they've been killed because of gang violence in and out of prison?
I've known quite a few, honestly. More than 10 to 15 individuals throughout my, you know, life, and I'm 34 years old now. So you imagine like those were just like instant, immediate family and friends, right? But this is not even including, you know, your homeboys and dudes you grew up with in the system or dudes you know in the streets, and then, oh man, this dude passed away.
It's crazy because like I asked that question because it brings perspective, and like I think about it because I've lost so many people too. That like, why are we still here? So why is Ernesto still here? Why are you not a part of the 15 or so people that have passed, and why do you think that is?
You know, from an individual that had actually got shot, right, and survived, you know, it comes back to like my connection and my spiritual connection with God, and just what I've come to believe and accept in my life. For one, I know that someone was praying for me. You know, I feel that there's power in prayer. You know, there's power in the Word of God, and I survived my gunshot wounds. I survived, and they were aiming to kill me. And one of the things that I know has been just the hand of God over me, right? Like there's something more destined, and I guess that's why I even found change. Like transformation, and I've humbled myself, and I've been driven to succeed because I'm like, bro, I've been given a second chance. Like when you're shot and you're kind of just tucked away in prison and you're gonna die in there, Like, it's either gonna break you or it's gonna make you, right? In my situation, I was blessed. Whether I accepted God at one point in my life or didn't, like, you can still feel like this is something that really, like, no one can really pinpoint what it is unless you have a spiritual or religious belief. You know, because if you tell somebody else that doesn't have that background, they're like, oh, this dude's lucky. Like, man, bro, luck doesn't exist.
No, it's crazy because when people tell me they don't believe in God, I just be like, well, if I think about being in prison, you know, like, and I think about those moments, and I know that God got me through that moment. Like you just know. You know, like, there's no other way to explain. You just know. It's hard to explain to somebody who doesn't believe. But I think great men come from hard times, like hard struggle, getting shot, getting stabbed, going to prison, taking losses. Because you get closer to God during those moments. You know what I mean? And,
for sure.
And for some of us, like, we're so like strong-willed, like gang members. We're so like loyal, invested in that lifestyle. And so now that we've transformed our life, we're so loyal and invested in our families and our kids and people we love. And I could see that in you, with you and your son and your wife. I see that, like, that passion is there. Just like I know the passion was there when you were in that gang life. You would have gave everything for it. So how did you transform your life? Because you were so into that world, and I know because I was. Like, how did you transform your life into who you are today?
You know, epiphanies, man. Like, awareness, right? I woke up one day and I literally started questioning my environment, because I'm the type of individual, like, I'm not dumb. Like, I'm not, whether I believe that my whole life, and people told me that, right? Like, I know that I'm not dumb, right? I have the ability to move, talk, speak, hear. I can walk, I can touch, I can smell, right? So off the back, I have an ability to do something, right? And I also feel, I also think, right? So when I was in my situation of being in prison and not knowing, because the laws didn't even hit of, like, they were not even into effect when I decided to even change. Like, but you just know that you're not getting what you're putting in. Right? And I don't have no resentment, no anger, anything towards the lifestyle that I decided to live. Why would I? Right? That's why I feel that I'm in the re-entry field now, because, hey, bro, like, I know, I understand, I want to help. Right? So at that point, when I decided, actually around 2013, I was like, you know what? There has to be something better than this. And it's almost like I've always wanted, I had a desire to grow. I had the desire to want to be something different. I remember going, you know, being transferred from one prison to another, from Pelican Bay to Corcoran. I would sit in my cell and I was alone for like a year, right? And I would always turn on my TV, and, you know, like, for the first hour in the morning, I would watch and I would hear these preachers, right? Whether it was T.D. Jakes, Creflo Dollar, you know, Joe Osteen, individuals that, you know, Billy Graham, like, you could just hear, like, they had passion. I'm like, bro, like, they're talking about their God, right? At that point, I didn't really accept God. I was like, they're really, like, there's power behind this. And then I would wait till the afternoon, and at 2 o'clock every day, I would watch the Steve Harvey show. And, like, he helped me process so much, and it was like a healing moment, right? So I knew I had to find the direction that I wanted, because you had positive male role models through a TV telling me, this is what you have to do, this is what's expected, this is what a man should be, and boom, 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 this. Now everything exists inside of me, I just had to put it and start moving and doing. So I actually just started, like, I was like, you know what, I have to better myself. And it wasn't easy. Like, like, if you ask me, like, people may like, man, you know, you're doing good, you're doing this, you have the ability to this, you have to do that, like, you have a family, a son, and all these things. Like, it's not easy. Like, it's hard to obtain, and it's hard to hold on to, because I also have trauma. I also have these things that I've experienced, and you have to learn how to love again. You have to learn how to trust, right? And not let that be a factor in why you can't raise your son, and why you can't be a father, why you can't be a husband, right? So when I did start the process of transformation, it was a difficult thing. I tossed and turned, I cried. I broke up in sweats and tears, because I felt that I was leaving a cult that best suited me. Right? And
your identity.
My identity. Like, it was my identity. And I felt that I was betraying what I felt was like a military, you know, thing. Was like, man, I have to be this way. I gotta dress this way. I gotta walk this way. I have to do everything that I possibly can to further myself. And when you really just step back from that, like, you're like left with your bare skin. Right? And you're trying to learn how to be that individual. So when I started my transformation, it was a process, and I continued to better myself, but I also knew that I wasn't going to be able to do it alone. So I surrounded myself with, like, the community, right? Whether it was the NAs, the AAs, the CGAs, the lifers groups, and people that I knew were like-minded individuals.
And that's important, having that community. I think people don't understand how important that is. Like, when you're trying to transform your life, or even like out here trying to get into some field that you want to get into, you have to surround yourself with the type of like-minded individuals to do that. And that's a huge part of it. So for you, like, what is your biggest battle you've ever faced, and how were you able to overcome it, or still overcome it to this day?
I think the biggest battle, and I emphasize a lot on it when I do get the opportunity, is mental health. Like, you know, excuse me for my language, but like, we done been through some shit, you know, as men, right? Whether it was in the streets at a young age, or whether it was in prison. And, you know, you tend to question yourself as an individual when you have experienced a lot of these things. And you tend to doubt yourself. You tend to have this imposter syndrome, right? Like, am I good enough? Is this who I am? Am I even doing the right thing? It's a natural thing. And I think anybody that doesn't really question it, or like me, I tip my hats out to them if they have it figured out, right? I would like to really know, but I think it's a natural thing as men that have been formerly incarcerated to want to, you know, or tend to doubt yourself for that. And for me, like, I've overcome it by, of course, reading my Bible, having my conversations with God, and then finding my family and friends that reinforce that positiveness in me. Like, I haven't overcome it completely, because I'm still in the process. I've only been home 6 months, and I think I'm doing pretty good.
Really good,
you know,
like mentally, like, it just the way you carry yourself, all like the progress you're making, you're on a really good track. And that goes into, like, well, what about the people out there who have all these excuses about how they're not able to, you know, be happy, and they're all this, like, you've been out 6 months, and you did how much?
15 years.
15 years in prison. You're out 6 months, and like, you got a positive energy about yourself. You're always talking about making progress. What is your advice to people out there who feel like they're stuck, and that they've lost hope, and they may have dealt with trauma, and maybe going through a similar battle like you faced with the mental health aspect? What advice would you give to them?
You know, one of the things that's like, because we only really have control of what we do. We don't have control of what happens around us. What we do and what we decide is a byproduct. Like, the outcome is a byproduct, of course, right? So if, you know, I once heard these two things, right? And I've stuck with them, and it's allowed me to process my difficulties and then my choices and how I live my life. And for one, I remember when I stepped into my first NA class, they had this big sign and it said, "Beware." right? And I always, every time I get an opportunity, I like to say it because it's the truth. And it says, beware of your thoughts, because your thoughts become your feelings become your actions become your habits become your character becomes your lifestyle, and your lifestyle becomes your destiny, right? And it can't really, that's like the formula to life, right? You really can't go wrong with just doing that. Okay, mind, feelings, actions, habits, and then of course, when I heard it, I just started applying it. Well, I have to think it. Yeah. If I can think it, then I can make it happen, because it's going to become me.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
And one of the other things was by Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
Right? Viktor Frankl was an individual that was in a concentration camp.
Yeah.
And he was held captive, and his wife and his expected son or daughter, a child was killed. His mom and his dad, were also killed through this process, right? That he lost everything. Mm-hmm. He lost everything. And at that point, the individual, when he wrote the book, The Man Searching for Meaning, mm-hmm. was just like, you know what, I'm learning, not in the exact words, but it's like, I'm learning that I can lose everything around me, but I can never really lose the ability to choose, mm-hmm. right? So it kind of connects with the kind of like the quote it's just like, so I realized, you know what, like the whole world can be falling apart. Like, Jane Doe, John Doe, they don't believe in me.
Yeah.
I'm held captive. I may be missing this, I may be missing that. And these are all the excuses that we put on ourselves because of trauma. Mm-hmm. Right? Or people tell us we're never going to become anything. Or we just don't really see people in our environment come out of that. Right?
Yeah.
But when I came to realize that, I applied it.
Yeah.
And of course, when you come from an environment where you are sentenced to either life in prison, and you see people not going home, and then you have no hope, like, I was just like, you know what, like, I'm going to apply those principles.
Yeah.
And really, I just started focusing on myself, on bettering myself. I can't focus on my parents, my brothers, my sister, the people around me. I can only focus on me.
Yeah.
And like, if that's something that I can pass on, like bro, like, take care of yourself, love yourself. It's not a selfish thing. That's a selfless thing. And I think a lot of times we we put that stigma on it, right? Like, well, I can't be selfish, because people say, you got to care for others. Well, of course, but it's a two-way street. Like, how can I care for you if I don't care for myself? I always tell my wife, I was like, you have to take care of you. Mm-hmm. Like, put me and my son to the side and take care of you, because when you're all right and when you're whole, then me and my son can be whole.
Yeah, it's so true, man. So true. And I see, like, those principles that you learned and are keeping you strong today, and that are going to take you forward into, continuously living a happy life, because, like you said, you're in control of all that. Like so many things can happen around us. We know that, but it's all about how we respond to them. And that was one of the books that transformed my life as well, Man Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
Looking at that, looking at other people's lives, and then reflecting on yours and saying, mine could be worse. And if this man was able to overcome that, so can I. And that's what, like, one of my main missions here, for even having you here, is like, somebody hears this and they listen to your story and they say, well, if Ernesto did it, I can do it.
Of course.
And they look at you and they see themselves in you, or vice versa. So it's like, I think that's what's so powerful about us overcoming the lives we live and still here. God still has us here for a reason, and a part of that reason is to make a change to those, make amends, make a change, to make a positive impact.
Yeah.
So
sure.
What's next for you? Like, what are your goals going down the line? What are you currently doing? And where do you see yourself? What would you like to do?
So currently, I am employed. As far as like in that area, I'm a career coach, a reentry career coach at that.
Nice.
Assisting men and women that are coming out of prison. So I work at the work source. I think that's a big thing. Like, I always feel like there's like two strong elements: education and employment, like the biggest things, right?
Yeah.
So I do that, and I'm a reentry navigator for our youth. You know,
Nice.
I do that. So that's like my second job.
Yeah.
I love it because, you know, I sometimes think like, you know, fresh out the gate, I was like, I want to go make money.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you get lost in this thing. Like, you want to go make money. I want to go buy a house. I want to start my own small business. I want to be able to give my son and my wife that, and my son's generation, to say, you know what, our father created this generational wealth and this foundation for us so that we don't have to struggle. We just got to do the work.
Yeah.
You know, the simple work. He did the hard work, right? But I'm doing that at the moment, and right now I'm still transitioning. I'm still transitioning. I'm moving at my own pace.
Yeah.
I'm moving what I feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
What I would hope in the near future, probably 6 months out, is to, of course, discharge parole.
Yeah.
And then continue to do the groundwork. I consider myself a soldier. Mm-hmm. You know, I considered it when I was in the lifestyle, and I always consider it what I'm doing here. Mm-hmm. Like, I have to set that example, and I have to continue to be in this field to help people. To inspire, right? I feel like the biggest act of service that you could do is just inspire, lead by example, and then become that individual that people can see and says, you know what, if he did it, why can't I?
Yeah.
Right.
And is that your purpose? What is your purpose?
My purpose is to, you know, it definitely is to make a print in this world. Right? You know, most people say, well, I want to make a print in my community, my family. Why not think big? Like, if it's one thing, like, I don't limit myself.
Yeah.
I know it's going to take hard work.
Yeah.
I know it is. And I know it's going to take a lot of losses and a lot of wins and a lot of tears and a lot of sweat and a lot of blood. But I'm willing to make that, right? I feel that for the crime that I committed, I impacted my family, my immediate family and friends, my community, the world at large, right? And I have a responsibility to correct that.
Yeah.
To correct that, because you imagine, when I committed my crime, it set a ripple effect into the community.
Yeah.
You know, family and friends and people in the community didn't feel safe coming out of their homes.
Yeah.
Law enforcement didn't feel comfortable addressing or stopping an individual, you know, and greeting them in a nice way, right? So now that I'm out, like you mentioned, like, I'm on that path of making amends. Yeah. And if I don't know you and if I didn't hurt you, guess what? I'm still making amends to you.
Yeah.
Like, if your dad and your mom hurt you, or somebody hurt you, or you were victimized, I want to be that person that you possibly need to make that move towards something different, right? And I've kind of just, like, I realized that hurt people, you know, and heal people, you know, and that's what I want to do. Yeah. I don't consider myself no guru or nothing. I'm just a normal individual that was born and raised in South Central. Yeah. You know, I didn't went through some stuff, and I have an opportunity.
Yeah.
You know,
that's what qualifies you, man, is your life experience. Like you talked about guru, we see a lot of gurus who, you know, they gotta go through all the education, they go through all this to become who they become, like mental health professionals, all that. But for me, like, the real value, I'm not saying they don't offer it, but the real value in my life and what I've seen is comes from people who actually experience stuff, overcome it. There's nothing better than that. It's like being taught, like, you know, how to create something by a master craftsman who's been doing it their whole life, instead of me going to a trade school for it. It's just such a difference. You know what I mean? It's like that hands-on from somebody. So you're making an amazing impact. You're going to continue to, I can see, like, you have this want to just continue to grow and learn. You're open to that. And that's key as you go forward, is just be open to learning from everybody, you know, but also there always comes a point where you have to stand firm in your own beliefs and convictions. So what is like your definition of a leader? Because I feel like the world needs more of those. What is a leader to you?
You know, I just on my personal thing, because I tend to be a critic, right, of myself, and then I tend to be a critic of others also as well, not to be judgmental or whatnot, but I always look at people and what they're doing, and I say, well, how can I do it better, or how can I learn from what they're doing, right? Both the pros and cons of things. I definitely feel that a leader is not someone that leads somebody, and I know that the word lead, leader, that's what it brings out, but like, sit down with your people, man.
Yeah.
Like, that's the biggest example that you can set with your people, because if you sit down with the individuals that are around you, it tends to be more of a personal thing.
Right.
And you can relate rather than seeing someone in a pedestal or seeing someone at a higher level, right? And saying, man, how is that individual leading me or this organization when you don't sit down with me and you have a simple cup of coffee, all right? Or you ask me, how am I doing? Or how was your day today? Or simply take me to go do something that's needed, especially like for us that are coming home from prison. Like, don't lose yourself in the position. And for me, it's just like that. Like, you know what? I come out and I might be an example. I'm able to articulate myself. I have some type of education. I have lived experience. How can I do that and still not let it go to my head to where it says I lose focus of what's down here? Because I came from down here. Right.
Exactly.
I came from the streets. And I want to be able to do that. And for me, that's what defines a leader. Someone that could not only relate, but also put themselves with that individual day in and day out and walk with them.
Nice. And just another part of that is, I believe that it's being able to make some sacrifices and also endure pain if it means for the better. And so I ask you that. I say that because I want to ask you about your tattoo removal, because I've been seeing on Instagram. You've been going through it. Now I know many people that do it. Like, what made you want to get your tattoos removed? Like, why is that something important for you to do, to where you go through that pain? Because I know it's painful. In order to do it.
I now that I'm older, before I get into it, like, I've realized that the gangster is not outside. Like, the gangster's inside, The individual who I was inside. This is just a facade. Like, this is just like buying a brand new car, right? A Mercedes or whatnot. Like, nah, man, I'm inside, right? People say, you've changed. No, I've reformed. So coming out of prison and I have my tattoos, I'm not a gang member. I don't represent the lifestyle, right? I'm not about making bad decisions. I'm about being an example of my community, being an example of my family and friends. So when I go through the process, best believe it's not the easiest process, but I go in there and I have a great connection, a relationship with the doctor that's treating me at the moment, which is Troy at Homeboys Industries. And we're like, bro, I'm not your friend, let's go. Let's do it. And usually, like, you'll see individuals last, like, not even like 5 minutes, and then hey, I'm good, I don't want to try it no more, because they're burning your skin. Right? Or you see individuals they're like there for an hour because of and for me, it's not like, let's go. I tend to prepare beforehand in everything I do. So whether it's the day before, I'm already talking crap to myself. I'm hyping myself up. Self-talk it's a big thing for me. And I go in there and I get it done.
That's right.
And it's not easy. It's something that's painful. But I feel that it's a must, and it's a necessity that I do it, because I want to be approachable. Right? I want to be approachable. I want you to come into a setting and only hear what I'm telling you. Not just automatically you judge me because of my tattoos and my past, right? I feel that the individual that I'm trying to become today, yeah, most people, and I have had people tell me, man, don't get your tattoos, that's your story. Like, well, yeah, you try to, have these tattoos when you're walking in certain areas of LA, right? Like, not everyone's gonna feel the same. I can't sit there and explain to this dude my whole life story of redemption and change, right? He's gonna ask me where I'm from, and that's that. Right? So I want to alleviate that stress from myself. Because I'm not that individual. Like, more than likely you rob me, you're going to rob me. More than likely you pull out a gun, you're going to shoot me. I'm going to die. Like, I'm not going to fight back. I'm not that individual that wants to go see prison again. And I do it because I want to make my family feel safe. That they could take me out. It's almost like, we try to go out and my wife's like, well, you can't go certain areas because of this, and that. So I'm limited. And then my son sees me. Like, for me, the biggest thing, like, why I even do anything in life is my son, right? He already starts questioning my tattoos. He sees I take off my shirt and monsters, and he sees the evilness on the outside, right? Even though I hold him and I love him. So I know he's going to get to a certain age and he's going to ask the questions of, what is, Dad, why do you have this number on the side of your face? Why do you have this? And I have to sit there and explain to him the mistakes that I've made. And if I can show progress that I'm trying to erase my past, like, I think that's major, especially for him. Because you know what? My dad did this, but this was wrong. So he tried to take it away from what he did.
Well, Ernesto, you're like, a perfect example of just real change, and just like I'm just so happy to have met you, to know you. Like I identify a lot with you, in more ways, because we really haven't talked that much. But like, getting to know you here today more, and watching you and as you grow and seeing you on Instagram and stuff, like, I see so much of like myself in you, like how like things in life inspire you forward, like your son, like that's, like you said, one of the reasons why you doing what you're doing, you're going through these, these things to change your life. And it's like, I feel that's important, that you have to find something, your why, that something that moves you every day to get out of bed, to stay the right course, to get tattoos removed, all that stuff. And so I really, really respect that, man. And just one last thing, man. Is there anything else you want to say, a message that you want to get across to the listeners and the viewers before we go?
Most of all, I want to thank you for even allowing me and giving me the opportunity to be here with you and share this space.
Well, I'm honored.
It means the world to me. It really does, because it gives me an opportunity to like share my life story, right? And to let people know that at times people write a narrative for us, right? And that we all have the ability to be a writer and then write our own life stories and how it will end. For me, I felt that at a young age I had wrote my book and I had wrote the beginning and the ending.
Right.
But I realized that you can write more books. Right? And I'm learning that as I'm growing, that I can make up chapters in my book and that they can be appealing and that they can help and that I can really make an impact in this world, right? If it's one thing I can leave today, is just like, it's something that I live by every day, and I mentioned it, be aware of your thoughts, man, because your thoughts become your feelings. They become your actions, they become your habits, they become your character becomes your lifestyle, and your lifestyle at the end will be your destiny of what you do in this world. And it's never too late. Like, if other people have done it, I can do it, and others can do it. So,
amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Thank you for tuning in today. I truly appreciate your time and support. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. And thanks again to Joe Guitar Doors for sponsoring the show. Please pay them a visit at www.joeguitardoors.org.